one of my favorite lines from Chicken Run. So,
Yeah.
alrighty, cool. Well, this will not take too long at all. I'm gonna start my stopwatch.
What's this for? Is this podcast? Is this radio? Is this?
It's all of the above for podcast and for radio.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, I learned to maximize my interviews. Let's put it that way. So,
Oh, I hear you. I did Bill Cunningham yesterday. I did 25 minutes with him on the radio yesterday, and I just made it my lead story in the newsletter this morning. Like,
nice,
I'm just transcribing this shit because it's really good.
cool. All right, my friend, we're coming in three, two, one. So, are the Bears coming to Indiana? Are they staying in Illinois? Are they going to Arlington? Are they staying in Chicago? Are they going to Hammond? What the heck is going on? Well, to figure all that out, I asked an old friend of mine to join me on the program today. It is Patrick Pfingsten. Patrick is an Illinois broadcaster. He and I basically do the same thing, except I used to do it in Illinois. I do it in Indiana. He used to do it in Indiana. Now he does it in Illinois. So, Patrick, my friend, how's it going? How was session for you
I would
guys?
argue that I'm younger and whiter and probably a little more grumpy than you, but that's probably the only difference.
Probably not as white, depending on who you talk to here in Indiana. So my friend, there we go. Well, let's sort of put this all in perspective for our audience here. You have the Chicago Bears, who've been
Mhm.
floating with the thought of moving, leaving Soldier Field, maybe going to Arlington Heights and the suburbs, or coming down here to Indiana. So it's sort of had this sort of bidding war between the wife and the girlfriend, who gets who. The Illinois put together a package, Indiana put together a package, but the Illinois legislature met. They just wrapped up on Sunday morning at like 5:10 or 4:10 in the morning. So kind of walk our audience through what happened.
Yeah, well, so the our legislature adjourns on May 31st, and it's always chaos at the end of session. We it's supposed to end on Sunday. It was supposed to be Sunday night. They didn't adjourn until after 4:30 on Monday morning. Um, as you know, Abdul, the Bears have been playing footsie with the stadium situation for years. They've been unhappy with Soldier Field for years. They bought the site of the old Arlington Park racetrack, where they tore down a perfectly beautiful racing facility, and said, dating back to like 2022, that we're going to build our stadium here. And then there was never any real progress on that. The governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, who's a Democrat who's definitely running for president sometime next year, is said from the start, we're not going to use public dollars for a stadium. And his polling and every poll that I've seen makes it clear that the public doesn't want to use public money to build a stadium. It will help you with infrastructure if you need it, especially because a lot of it's in our capital plan anyway. And three, on property taxes, his longtime position was, well, you're going to have to talk to your local taxing bodies about that because we're not going to do anything about it. Then 2 years ago, the Bears go and out of nowhere hold this giant press conference on at Soldier Field with the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, who looks like a deer in the headlights every time he's asked a question in a press conference, and is hapless and ineffective and is gumming up the works of government more than you can imagine. And they said, we're going to build a new stadium right here on the lakefront without consulting with the Friends of the Parks, the group that basically challenges any new development on the lakefront and has won more court battles than they've lost. Just, see that beautiful Lucas Museum in Chicago that never happened. And two, they never asked the city for a penny. That's why Brandon Johnson was up in front of the crowd, because he's like, I'm going to get a stadium and it's not going to cost me a thing. Hooray. Instead, they wanted $2 billion in infrastructure from Illinois to essentially tear down Soldier Field, make some infrastructure improvements on the lakefront, and basically build a new exit on Lakeshore Drive for where the new stadium would be. Something to the tune of $2 billion that they never asked the governor or the legislature for before they made the announcement. So I was at a press conference with Pritzker and the Senate President Don Harmon and the Speaker of the House Chris Welch that morning. I had the Bears press conference in my ear while Pritzker and Welch and Harmon were having another press conference out in the suburbs, and they're essentially at that point like, yeah, I don't know what they're talking about. So this has been rocky for years. Once the lakefront thing fell through, they went back to Arlington Heights. We're still spinning their wheels. The state government over here was not particularly motivated to do a lot for the Bears because the Bears have been so difficult to work with, essentially, for state legislators here. Then you all came into the game and screwed everything up. Offering $1 billion in a pony for a site on steel slag and biomass, which Google it, it's poo, in Hammond, Indiana. And then the legislature felt like they were backed into a corner and had to do something to incentivize the team to stay in Illinois. So they had this big property tax bill called a payment in lieu of taxes, where essentially they would build their stadium and negotiate their property tax bill with their school district, city, etc. The progressives in the legislature didn't love that because they didn't want this $10 billion sports franchise to get a giant property tax break when all of our property taxes are through the freaking roof. So they were able to get something like it through the House, but as the clock ticked to the end of session in the Senate over here this weekend, we were doing an old-fashioned stakeout outside of a Senate caucus Saturday night. They basically said, "Yeah, we don't have the votes." So they tried to conjure up a bill out of nowhere between Saturday night and Sunday night to essentially have the Bears build it privately, and then it becomes a publicly operated facility that they would pay no property taxes on. And the Senate was able to scrounge up enough votes to pass it at 3 a.m. or something. And the House never took it up in the next hour and a half, basically saying, we haven't seen it, we haven't read it, we haven't polled our members on it, we don't know what to think of it, so we're not doing it. So they adjourn at 4:30, and after all that, we're still nowhere in Illinois.
As voice here, ladies and gentlemen, it's my colleague Patrick Pfingsten. Patrick is a radio talk host at WMAY Radio, where he used to work before I came here to Indiana. And he's been following the whole Bears, Indiana, Arlington Heights, Soldier Field drama. What you call it what you will. It's interesting, Patrick, because normally the Illinois legislature is notorious for waiting till the last minute to do things. Did somebody kind of hope in mind that, hey, we'll do what we always do, and something will just magically come together?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's generally the way things operate is that if there's a bill and the pressure's on at the end of session, they can scrounge up enough votes, especially supermajority Democrats, to get it across the finish line. The problem here is there's just not a lot of excitement to help the Bears right now, especially at a time when it's a really terrible PR look to give the Bears big old property tax breaks, and two, this isn't like you probably remember the White Sox thing better than I do. I think I was 4 in 1988 when they passed it. That the White Sox were essentially getting ready to go to Florida, going to Tampa St. Pete. And it took Big Jim Thompson and Mike Madigan, who's now in federal prison, and I think the Senate president was Phil Rock at the time, to stop the clock in the House at midnight, twist arms, break kneecaps, and barely get the thing across the finish line. And I think if you there was no champion for that in the Capitol this weekend. J.B. Pritzker wasn't willing to stick his neck out like that. Chris Welch, the speaker, doesn't have the kind of control over his caucus that Madigan did, and the Senate president was months ago said, I've got problems with a property tax break for the Bears when the people in my district don't get property tax breaks. So they never had a champion, which means there was never anybody in either chamber that was the overwhelming force to get this done. And you just never felt the urgency for it. Even after midnight on Monday, when it was backs against the wall, you never felt an overwhelming sense of, my God, we've got to get this done.
Our guest in the program today is my colleague Patrick Pfingsten. Patrick is radio talk show host at WMAY Radio back home in Springfield, Illinois, where I was before I came here. Has been following the whole Illinois legislature and the whole Bears saga and will the Bears move to Indiana? Will they not move to Indiana? So we're always happy to have him on the program. Okay, Patrick, we had a couple of days since Monday. What's the sentiment now back home in the Empire?
The People's Republic.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested. The governor hasn't had any public events since first thing Monday morning. He did kind of his post session press conference, and really deflected a lot on the Bears. That the legislature's got to figure it out. I think that there's a belief among there's definitely two schools of thought. There's those like the speaker, Chris Welch, who believe that yeah, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna get it done. We'll make a deal. We'll come back this summer and pass it, and everything's gonna be fine. Actually, there's probably three schools of thought, because the second is I don't know how we figure this out, because we are so far apart. The public is not with us on this, other than a group of very loud Bears fans, and the policy isn't easy. So there's a feeling that it's going to be really hard to strike a deal. And then I think there's a growing number in the legislature. I heard this a lot around the State House this weekend of people who just think that the Bears are bluffing, that they still think the Bears are using Indiana to get a better deal from Illinois, and they're taking this almost as calling the Bears bluff. And if the Bears don't sign on the dotted line with Indiana in, say, 30 or 60 days, then they'll know it's a bluff, and the Bears' entire bargaining position collapses.
Now, let me ask you this, because I think we can say for definitely, are the Bears leaving the city of Chicago? Period. Now, are they leaving, or now? Granted, Chicago suburbs, they're still the same thing as far as I'm concerned. But it looks like from everything I read over the weekend and kind of followed folks, that the Bears will be leaving the downtown area either for Arlington Heights or Hammond, Indiana, or other parts unknown.
It depends on who you ask. I mean, that's how convoluted this is, right? That the Bears have said in public statements for weeks that this was a choice between Arlington Heights, think Westfield, right? Kind of in that take you 45 minutes to an hour to get out of downtown, to get there, kind of distance from city center. Or Noblesville or something like that. And Hammond is actually, the Hammond side is actually closer to Soldier Field than the Arlington Heights site. I think it's like 19 miles or something. And so the prevailing feeling had been, yeah, this is Arlington or Hammond. But then one of Brandon Johnson's guys, his top advisor, a guy named Jason Lee, was kind of skulking about the shadows of the State House this weekend, and was apparently in a bunch of Chicago legislators' ears, telling them that the city was still in play and they can't pass a bill that would basically allow the Bears to leave when the city is still in play. And as we've kind of suss stuff out in the last couple of days, it sounds like the Bears have been talking to the city a little bit behind everybody's back, which just adds to the drama and lack of trust on all sides here, and is also kind of leaving those leaders in state government here like, why should we trust you? Because we don't believe a thing you can tell us. This is like worse than your toxic girlfriend in college sort of situation, right? It is really ugly behind the scenes.
Patrick, let me ask you this. Obviously, if no one trusts the Bears and politicians don't trust the politicians and the public doesn't trust anybody, what the hell are we doing here?
That's about the story of my life, isn't it? I mean, it is so frustrating, because I think part of me, and this isn't reporting, this is just my opinion, that part of the reason that JB Pritzker got involved in the mix in the first place, after Indiana put their pie in the sky tax increases that Lake County voters are surely going to love into the ether, is that for him, it was more about, I don't want to be the guy who loses this 100-year-old franchise to another state because that will be my legacy. That'll be the first line of my obituary. It won't be billionaire. It won't be philanthropist. It won't be three-term governor. It won't be guy who thinks he can be president. It'll be, he's the guy that lost the Bears. And I think he saw his political aspirations going up in smoke. And that may be what actually got anything started here when Indiana brought their bill out of nowhere. And was that February? It feels like
Yeah.
months ago. February, that Indiana's bill kind of came out of nowhere.
So, what has been the reaction with Indiana sort of hanging the specter of the state of Indiana sort of hanging over the Illinois General Assembly?
Yeah, it's mostly been frustration, I think, because I think there's a lot of doubt that the Indiana side is real. I'm certainly not an expert on Hammond. I've played poker in the casino there a couple of times, but that's my level of expertise on Hammond. And certainly it sounds like there are environmental concerns about the site. We haven't heard if the Bears even think they can make it work, which they would have said publicly by now to ratchet up pressure on Illinois, you would think, which also makes me wonder if they have, if this isn't a bluff, if it just is, if it doesn't work because they haven't said so. And two, I think there's the PR, right? You saw the shots of downtown Chicago and Soldier Field last year when or this it would have been January, I guess, that when the Bears played the Packers in the playoffs and then the Rams the next week. There is nothing more beautiful than downtown Chicago at night. And those shots on the lakefront, I mean, that is the visual people have when they think of the Chicago Bears. And I think there's a belief here that there's no way that George McCaskey, who's the president or the owner of the Bears, main owner of the Bears, wants Papa Bear Hallis's legacy of the monsters of the Midway, this team that is the centerpiece of sports in Chicago, right? Chicago is a Bears town. It's not a Bulls town. It's not a Cubs town. It's a Bears town. And I think he doesn't want to see that legacy eroded with Goodyear blimp views of the BP refinery in Whiting and downtown Gary. I think he sees the PR part of this, that it isn't a good look to move away from everything you've built over the last century.
All right. Our guest on the program today has been our good friend Patrick Pfingsten. Patrick is a columnist, analyst, commentator back in my home state of Illinois. Does the same thing in Illinois what I do here in Indiana. So, Patrick, my friend, obviously we'll be in touch probably in about 30 days or so to see if the writing's on the wall.
You know how to find me, and this certainly isn't going away.
All right. We got it.